Happy Friday, my friends. I hope you had a wonderful week. And this is Todd Boyum, and I'm just hoping you had a great week. And did you get the things done that you wanted to get done this week? Did you achieve them? How do you know if you achieved them? Know, uh, do you have a plan, and are you able to track against that plan that you achieved your results? I hope you're getting some plan and that you're able to progress in an orderly fashion along the things that you're trying to accomplish. And that's a little bit about what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about in the context of calling that we have been talking about already, that there's an order to that. And so I go to a men's group every Friday morning. And today we were going over a part of King David's story. And the gentleman who was leading today, was teaching today, is a military expert. He's just an amazing man. And he started this concept with this particular chapter, which was the third chapter of Second Samuel, basically pointing out that it was a great passage for anybody who wanted to be a leader. They should be studying that passage. And he talked about how disorder equals chaos, which equals harm. And I thought that was really fascinating because it's really so true. I mean, if we don't have order in our lives, then it's going to lead to chaos, and that chaos is going to ultimately harm people. Oftentimes, people we care about, because we as leaders don't put order in place. Now, I think true calling will always be in context with order, because God has created reality to have order, right? So reality has order to it. I think even people that are, I mean, the whole idea that science, for instance, is observable and has structure to it and order to it is on the basis that, you know, creation has order and we're discovering those orderly patterns. So even those who, sometimes the scientific community doesn't want to believe in God, but yet they bank on the fact that he built order that's observable into creation. So that's kind of a little bit of a funny thing. But I think sometimes people will say that, well, God's, led me to do this or that or the other. But if the thing that they're leading to doesn't align with the order of creation, then it's pretty easy to see that that's probably not actually God's will. A calling, meaning called from God, by God, is always going to align with his will. Otherwise, he's not going to call you to do it, right? I mean, a calling, in medieval times, people would be underneath their Lord, right? And he would say, I need you to go and fight this battle or do this thing. And they were having to be in alignment with that will to follow that calling. But how much more so he who is the creator of the universe, who has made it available to us through Jesus Christ to always be aligned with him. So let's dig into this. So we're first off, we are called to be creators. In the beginning, he created man and woman in his image, and he is a creator. That's the first thing he does. He creates. So we are called to create. There's some amazing books by that. You should check out Jordan Rayner's Called to Create. Dig into that a little bit. But as long as we're fighting against this reality that for us to really be our best, truest, most authentic selves, we have to align to the calling God has for us in our life. As long as we're fighting against that, our successes really stand in the way to just harm people, ultimately. And so I want to tell you a little story. I'm a fan of a lot of personal development as well, because really good personal development always aligns with the principles of God. And Earl Nightingale is one of my favorites. And he tells this story in Lead the Field about a man who's trying to read the newspaper one day, and he's got his 4-year-old son kind of being disruptive. So he finally takes a page of the newspaper that has a picture of the world on it, and he tears it up into small pieces and makes a puzzle out of it and tells his son, here's some scotch tape, put this world back together, right? And he goes back to reading his paper. Well, in a very short period of time, the little boy says, here you go, Daddy. And here it is, the picture of the world all put together. And he's stunned that his, 4-year old could put this world together so quickly. And he said, well, how did you manage to do that? And he turned it over. He said, Daddy, there's a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together and then the world was together. And isn't that an awesome story? I love that because, the father's like, wow, that's just kind of profound that when the man is together, his world is together, right? And so that's the thing. You may have heard sometimes people want to change the world. I want to change the world. Well, if you're first going to change the world, you have to be willing to change your nation. You have to be willing to change your city, your community, your family, yourself, right? The only way to change the world is for you to change and aim at that. If you want to make a difference in the world that you're not making, you must change yourself first, and then you can go make that difference in the world, right? So I think one of the things to think about is that authentic self is going to be aligned to God. So the first thing I must do to really get my calling straight is to go to He who has the calling to give to me and to really get that part straight. That's the standard. That's the order of it. That has to happen first, right? In fact, Jesus has this great verse in Matthew 6:33 that says, seek first the kingdom of heaven, and then all these other things will be added unto you. I'm paraphrasing that a little bit, but that's the point, is that you have to first seek God in your life if you're going to receive your calling. But then, even then, you have to work on yourself. You have to make yourself meet that standard. Now, we're never going to meet the standard, right? But you have to be willing to say the pursuit of aiming at that standard is what I'm going to be about. I have to surrender to the fact that whether I can achieve it or not, the best of me is always in aiming at it. And a leader, one of the things that Scott at this thing called out today is that, the biggest leadership he ever had when he was in the military was when he was really driving the policies and standards of the military, even when he himself wasn't necessarily always able to attain them. Because that's what leaders have to do. You still have to say, but that's what we have to stay focused on. Otherwise, it deteriorates down, disorder happens, chaos happens, harm happens. If we get ourselves straight, our next thing is to get our family straight, right? And we live in a world today where, and look, I'm not picking on any people. I've unfortunately gone through divorce in my life. Not really what I wanted, but I have. My parents were divorced, and then they married other people and then got remarried later on. So I'm not picking on anybody, but the fact that we live in a world where the vast majority of people who come together in order decide to break that order is a highlight to the fact that we really struggle with surrendering to the reality of order. And one of the things we do is we say things like, well, I'm more for my kids, even if this marriage isn't going to go work out. Well, I want to highlight to you that if you and your spouse can't do a good job together when you're together working with your kids, it's going to only be that much harder when you're not together. And furthermore, if you're putting your kids first, that's out of order, because this relationship, according to God, is supposed to be first. And so this is what causes some of the time marriages to go awry. But even if you are going to put your kids first, even if you're saying that, Cheryl was telling me today about a young woman that she's working out with, and she had been telling her something the last couple of days, and this woman ended up talking to her mom, and her mom said the same thing, and it was kind of this cool conversation. But this young woman coaches a lot of young children, kids, and in soccer. And she was telling Cheryl this amazing thing. She said that she will ask these kids, tell me 3 things that you're really good at. And they'll be like, nothing. But then she'll say to them, well, tell me 3 things you're bad at. And they'll list 10. Where is that? Like, if we in a culture that is so blessed and is so good, and one of the things I do is a lot of genealogy, and I look at the past, and I tell you what people had to go through for us to get to what we have today. We have no real obstacles. And maybe that's why we get bored and make obstacles out of our marriages, because we don't have an obstacle external to us to find. I don't know. But we have everything, and yet so many people are making their kids know 10 things that they're bad at, but not 3 things they're good at. That's pretty tragic. Hopefully, you can see that that's not actually the desired standard order. Children should have a really great sense of themselves. It's no wonder that we struggle finding our calling when everything we think about is what we're bad at, instead of what God's blessed us with and what we need to bring to the world. So I want to challenge you, if you're stuck in that kind of thinking, if you're stuck in the thinking that says what you're bad at, go to God and say, what will you just tell me what I'm good at? And listen, if you start hearing what you're bad at, it's not God talking to you. Okay? It's this talk that you've heard from, I don't know, your parents or other people, or that you put into your own mind over time, because God knows how beautiful you are, and he hopes for you to go bring that calling to the world. And I think you should try to set aside those voices that are telling you otherwise and listen to him. So, our calling starts with God, and it spirals out. And if we won't connect with our calling to create a thriving culture for ourselves and for our families, well, then we'll create a different kind of culture, because we're gonna create a culture, right? If you if you if you and your family, eat at the kitchen table at a prescribed time, you're making one kind of culture. If everybody eats separate, you're creating a different kind of culture. And you actually have dominion over that. You have the ability to decide what kind of culture do you want to create in your family. So you can make that choice. And listen, even if you look at it and you go, man, I've been making bad choices, that's not the point. Okay? The beautiful thing of 2 Samuel chapter 3 that we were discussing today is that there had been a bunch of disorder. It had started with Saul. David contributed some of that himself. Other people were contributing to it. But ultimately, it's the chapter at which he becomes king, and he starts to say, we will create order here, and we will do the right thing. And you can decide to create the culture you want to create, that you're called to create at any point in time. And you start with your own life and your relationship with God, and then you bring that to your family, and then you bring that to your work and other places. That's the order of things. That's how it really works. That's how reality works. You can't ever change anything external to yourself if you won't change yourself first. And for you to really make the best of yourself, it has to align to the best calling God is giving you uniquely. So I hope that you'll pursue him in that, and that you'll come back to that order, even if it's janky. And if it's not janky, lean into it. If you already got some measure of success in it, be encouraged, stay with your calling, and go knock it out of the ballpark. And I hope you had a really wonderful week and you kept any measures. Now, listen, I talked about this a couple of times. I kind of didn't talk about it in the week. We're all kind of getting our year going and our decade going. And you have plans this year, and maybe you're still kind of getting those formed. You're kind of getting them going. Maybe they're kind of a struggle. Maybe there's a little bit of confusion and chaos for you. One of the things that I do as a coach is help people unlock and gain clarity on what their goals are, what their ambitions are, and how to move forward in them with traction and with focus. And, obviously, as a Christian, I'm happy to bring a Christian perspective to that to those that are Christians, but I work with a lot of people who aren't. And, it doesn't have to have that angle. So even though you'll hear me talk about that here, all of that is resonant reality, even if we're not talking about, anything having scripture associated with it. So if that's not your cup of tea, don't worry about it. Feel free to call me. But listen, if you are, and you appreciate that, well, then fine, we can have that conversation too. But I'm bringing that up because one of the things I'm in doing this year is each month I'm going to try to have a few sessions available to do free coaching sessions for people. No strings attached. Do a session. If that's all that comes of it, I'll be like, awesome. I hope you got some great help. I'm pretty confident you will if we get together and have a coaching session. And but if you want to talk about it afterwards and talk about how else we could work together, we can pursue that too. Really, no strings attached. So I still have some sessions available for January. And if you're interested, again, I'll put a link in the session below, and feel free to ask for it, and we'll book it and get together and do some coaching with you, help you get some traction and maybe get some momentum. Would love to do that for you. Love to serve you in that way. Hope you have a great weekend, my friends. Take care. I think we're still streaming, even though it's supposed to be stopping streaming. So if we're still here, hello again. Take